All right, all you Yinzers, welcome to another episode of the Mad Chad and Eddie Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Eddie Provident, and with me is Baker Mayfield's agent, who has his work cut out for him after this past Sunday, Mad Chad Nolan. Mad Chad, he got that big first down, though, man.
Oh, he was amped, I don't like to be super hyperbolic, as always stated on here. We try to avoid the hot takes. However, not even being a Yinzer, I truly have stayed on the path that I think Mayfield is one of the most overrated players in the league. And, Jarvis Landry ended up being the one that was very gracious with his turnovers and drops. But even if Landry wouldn't have failed, I had no faith that Mayfield was going to come down and lead a game-winning drive. I had faith that he was going to fail.
Dude, I think he is the ultimate, above average quarterback.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, that city and that fan base and that team has been so starved for a real quarterback that they're going to make the mistake and they're going to pay him way more than that dude is worth. It's fine with me too, but and here's the thing, I am sympathetic with other fan bases. I'll give you an example. Cincinnati. I actually want to see Cincinnati succeed at some point because I think that fan base deserves a good football team. They were so close with all those Andy Dalton teams. They just weren't. Andy Dalton wasn't the quarterback to get them over the hump, and I don't think he was ever going to be that type of quarterback. I would actually kind of put him in the Baker Mayfield category where he was an above average quarterback, but never never a franchise quarterback. Where I think Joe Burrow is a legitimate franchise quarterback.
Yes.
He didn't have it. They lost to the Jets this past Sunday, and that's that's a tough one. But they're a young team that's going through the growing pains. They're going to go through those lumps and those bumps in the road, where I want to see that fan base eventually have a team that wins for them. Where Cleveland, there's nothing redeeming about their fan base. Everyone always asks me, well, why do you mess with Cleveland? Why do you dunk on Cleveland so much? Why do you they're a city that hasn't had anything or won anything other than the NBA championship a couple years ago with LeBron? Why do you always beat up on them? Because their fans are so they're just, I can't stand them. They win one playoff game and they think that they're the best thing to happen to the NFL, and it's however many year existence. They're trying so hard to be something.
Well, here's what makes them bad to me is that all fan bases bicker on Twitter and make jokes and yesterday, they talked shit all off season, and rightfully so.
Bad.
The Steelers,
they won. We had to eat it.
Yeah, we had to eat it. But then yesterday, it was some of their top accounts, and listeners of the show will probably know the people that we're talking about. But I saw some of their top fans were going in private mode on Twitter and blocking people, and it's just listen, man, you gotta. If you're
gonna dish it out, you gotta take it.
I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy, and Bill Burr has this thing where he says, if you can't laugh at everyone, you can't laugh at anyone. That's one of my favorite lines ever. Right. So yeah, man, Cincy fans they can get nasty, but I don't see Cincy fans going in private mode or going blocked. It's
the same. I remember back to and this was a little bit before social media was as big as it is now, but I remember those Ravens Steelers rivalry games where I think that was a perfect example of the rivalry between the fan bases making the rivalry on the field that much better, because there was a mutual respect from both fan bases that hey, we love the style of football that your team plays, and I know that we're division rivals, and I know on the field the teams hate each other, but there was at least there was a mutual respect there between most of the fans. Where Cleveland, I don't see any respect there at all, and so you know what? If you're gonna be that way, then you're always going to be little brother, and we're always going to beat on you. We're always going to make fun of you. And whenever this kind of stuff happens, we're going to love every second of it. And if you can't handle it, too bad.
To me, the Browns or and the Flyers, those two fan bases act just like each other.
Yeah. There's a handful of Flyers fans that I can honestly say that I respect them. And we had back when we were 412 Sports Talk, we had Mikey on the show. Mike, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
I still talk to him occasionally on Twitter. Like, he's cool. My buddy Matt's always he's good with taking a good ribbing and dishing it back out and that kind of stuff. But they're few and far between on social media. And I realize 100% people could say the same thing about Steeler fans, same thing about Penguins fans, because there are a lot of difficult Yinzers to deal with. There's no doubt about that. But let's talk about the actual product on the field, Chad, the game.
Yes.
Because I'll be honest with you, I picked the Steelers to win in the staff picks this week, and I said the uglier the game was, the better it would be for the Steelers. That was my point. I did not expect it to be this ugly, to the point where the Steelers lost their kicker and couldn't go for two, or couldn't kick extra points, couldn't kick field goals. And we can get into that field goal thing in a minute. Like, we can talk about whether that was a good call or not and everything. But I really thought the Steelers showed some guts in going into Cleveland, playing a very ugly football game, for the most part, keeping Myles Garrett in check, for the most part, keeping the Cleveland running game in check, which after that Seattle second half was a big question mark. And, Ben did just enough to get the job done. He wasn't great, but he did just enough. He was a game manager. He did what he needed to do. When we needed a big fourth down touchdown, he got a fourth down touchdown to Pat Freiermuth. It was a very good, I think it was a good showing, because it was an ugly game. The Steelers showed heart. Their defense stepped up when they needed the defense to step up. They made plays. And it was, I thought this was as ugly of a game as it was. I thought it was an encouraging game for the Steelers.
Well, and we talked about the formula that they went into this game with is how this team is going to be set up to succeed at all. And that's run the ball. And the thing that is, Matt Canada took a lot of criticism early in the season, but
yes, he did.
One thing is promising, at least in these last couple of games, is that, and we talked about this, just because, okay, you run the ball a couple times here and this one only gets 1 yard and this one only gets 2 yards, and then right away they get discouraged and then they're not going to run the ball anymore. You cannot do that. You continue to run, and because they have committed to, we're going to continue to try to run, it is making this offense, especially the offensive line, better, because this offensive linemen love to run the ball. And Jeff Schwartz, who's a great follow on Twitter, was pointing out how aggressive and how much better this offensive line is getting. Do I still think they're a great offensive line? No, and I don't think they will be. And I did have to question them leaving Dan Moore on an island with Myles Garrett one too many times yesterday.
You know what I think that was? I think they saw what he did against Von Miller and thought, all right, we're gonna see if he can do it against Myles Garrett. And look, as good as Von Miller, who is now a Los Angeles Ram, which is, oh my God, that defense. But as good as Von Miller is, he's not Myles Garrett.
But the formula is there, and as you brought up, Ben not just doing enough. For one thing, as the game went on, I thought Ben was getting better and better as the game was going on, which is typically how Ben is. But this is, slowly starting to creep back into the 2004, 2005 vibes, where you have a good defense, you're not going to give up any big plays, don't turn the ball over, and let's establish a run. Now, all of a sudden, you do that week in and week out. Do I think they're a Super Bowl contender? No, because I don't think they would be able to score enough points against some of these more dynamic offenses. But I do think this team now is going to creep into the playoff conversation. And as long as they stay with that formula, and we talked about, the biggest Ben fan in the world, there was no way they were going to survive another season with him or anyone in that matter throwing the ball 40 plus times a game.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's take a quick break. When we come back, what I want to do is there's something that all three losses that the Steelers have on their schedule so far. There's something all three of them have in common. And then also you wanted to talk about, two of the defensive players and get a little bit more in depth about, who's the defensive MVP. So we're going to take a quick break. This is the Mad Chad and Eddie Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. We'll be right back after this. All right, right, welcome back to the Mad Chad and Eddie Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Eddie Provident. With me is Mad Chad Nolan. We are talking Pittsburgh Steelers today because Sunday they beat the Cleveland Browns 15-10. Very awkward, weird score for a football game, but when you don't have a kicker to kick extra points, you got to go for two, and the Steelers converted a 2-point conversion. So 15-10 from the Steelers in Cleveland. So, Chad, one of the things that I like, we talk about this team, especially when this team was 1-3. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were writing them off. You and I distinctly recall saying, it's not time to panic yet. It's getting bad. The offensive line was not showing us anything. I remember us laying into them. But I know that on this show, we never officially wrote them off.
No.
I know that on Steelers Today with Dale Lawley, myself and Dale actually cut a lot of flack in the comment section for not writing this team off.
You're a fanboy.
Yeah, not saying that they were done. We were shills for the organization, and we were sucking up to the Steelers and all that kind of stuff. But that's all right. I get it. I get it. People are frustrated when things are bad. People tend to look at the very worst case scenario. But there's one thing that all three of those losses that the Steelers had against the Raiders, against the Bengals, and against the Packers. One thing that they all had in common. Against the Raiders, at the end of the game, when the Steelers needed to stop the most, they couldn't stop the deep ball to Henry Ruggs, right? He goes, what was a 65, 70-yard touchdown pass late in the fourth quarter. At the biggest moment of the game, when they needed to make a stop, they couldn't. End of the first half against the Cincinnati Bengals, Jamar Chase hits him on Joe Burrow hits Jamar Chase on a 45, 50-yard deep ball with time running out in the first half at a big point in that game. It basically turned that game around, and the Bengals go on to win, and it really wasn't a close game after that. Mm-hmm. Against Green Bay, Joe Hayden gets the field goal, gets the block on the field goal. Minkah Fitzpatrick takes it to the house, and it's called back. In all three of those instances, a big play went against the Steelers. All right, the call or the outcome of the big play went against the Steelers. I would argue that the Steelers are three big plays away from potentially being an undefeated football team. Now, that Bengals game, they didn't respond. All right, but that Raiders game was closer than it looked. They were in that game late, and that play, that deep ball that the Carr threw was a dagger. And that Packers game was a 10-point game, and you could argue that field goal block was a 10-point swing.
Yeah.
So my point with that is not to say that the Steelers should be 7-0. My point with that to say the Steelers were never as bad of a football team as everybody made them out to be. They were always a decent football team. They were an average offense with a really good defense that at the time was letting up big plays. Okay? Even take Minkah Fitzpatrick on Sunday. He didn't get the big turnover that we all want to see from Minkah, but that fourth down pass incompletion that turned the ball over back to the Steelers, guess who made that pass defense on that fourth down in the fourth quarter? Minkah Fitzpatrick. So he's even starting to elevate his game a little bit to where it needs to be. And I think that if they get Minkah back, and then the two guys that we want to talk about, Cam Heyward and TJ Watt, keep doing what they do, man, this defense has a chance to be something special.
Well, I said to you before we started the show that the one thing I don't think that is, it's funny when Steelers lose a bunch of games and right away it's, right away all the media pundits that hate Ben come out and start saying, Ben's washed, he sucks, blah, blah, blah. Tomlin's going to USC, for God's sakes, and all this stuff. And now they've won 3 games in a row and have a really high possibility of winning 5 games in a row. At least they should. And if we're looking at the Bears and Lions, they should potentially be 6-3. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say, okay, where's all these articles about how this team was 1-3 with a washed quarterback, an overrated coach, an overrated defense, a bad offensive line, a bad draft, all these narratives? Where are these articles flipped where it's talking about, it could have been really easy for that locker room at 1-3 to go, yep. You know what, man? this ain't our year. We got a 80-year-old quarterback and a bad offensive line, and we should just tank for a new quarterback. And right away, here they come again, and it's just like we continue, just like with the Penguins, we always continue to doubt Mike Sullivan. This is the year the Penguins are going to not make the playoffs, and then they always do this rally and they make the playoffs.
They figure it out somehow, some way.
At one point, do we stop questioning this leadership? And I don't think Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin, and especially Cam Heyward and T.J. Watt are who I would consider probably the four pillars of leadership for this team. They've all stepped up. Now, the fake field goal call
was a bad
call, but the overall game plan that Tomlin and his coaching staff went into this week was fantastic, and I'm not seeing any articles about that. The X's and O's, they absolutely, you could tell the Browns were frustrated by the game plan. You could tell they were. And
you brought up leadership, Chad.
Mm-hmm.
So this brings me to a question that you asked me on, before we got on air, and I think it's a good conversation to have now. You've got T.J. Watt, who is the probably unquestioned best player.
Aaron Donald's like,
well, I was going to say in the AFC on the defensive side of the football. All right, so you've got Aaron Donald, T.J. Watt, who's the unquestioned best player in the AFC on the defensive side of the football.
I'd agree.
Okay, and then you have Cam Heyward, who is not the best player, even maybe on his own defense.
Pro Football Focus says he is.
But I would argue when you take into account the position that he plays, combine that with the leadership that he provides, which is what you're talking about, he may be the most valuable player on that defense and maybe on that football team.
That's a debate. I mean, there's going to be, I could debate myself on that topic.
All right, let's do it. Here, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip a coin. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip a coin.
All right.
Heads or tails?
Tails.
Okay. So you said tails?
Tails.
Okay. So tails, who do you want?
So because I came up with it, I'm going to let you know why I think Cam Heyward, I'm going to take Cam's side. Yeah.
Tails, you get Cam.
Yeah.
All right. Heads, I get Cam.
Okay.
It's tails. Okay. Everybody, if you can see that.
Besides the people listening on the audio side.
If you're listening on the audio side, it's a tails. If you're on YouTube, you saw that. Okay, so tails, you got Cam Heyward, so go.
All right, so again,
this is most valuable player on the Steelers
this year
on the Steelers defense.
I mean, let's start right off the bat with the fact that T.J. Watt has missed a whole entire game, and then also wasn't 100% for a portion of the game. There was a couple of games there where he was, the Green Bay game. He didn't seem like the T.J. Watt that we have become accustomed to. Cam Heyward, I believe, especially when you consider the fact they're missing Tyson Alualu and Stephon Tuitt on that 3-4 defensive line, has performed. This is, to me, the best season that he's played. And you're talking about a guy that's been an all-pro, multiple Pro Bowlers, and he's having the best season of his career. And TJ is going to get a lot of the notoriety because he does make a lot of the splash plays, and the splash plays help win games. But on a play-by-play basis, this season, I believe Cam Heyward's actually been the most consistent player on the team, the best player on the team, not just the defense, the team. And I think it's been noticed. Now, again, some of DK staff gets to go inside the locker room, but I don't. But just from the perspective that we're given, it does appear that Cam is a respected leader, and it feels like he's been speaking out more and more and speaking up more and more and really taking on that leadership role. And he always calls out dumb comments and narratives and takes players' side. He's a great leader, at least apparently. And I really think that not enough's being said about the season he's having off the field and on the field.
I agree with everything you said, and also I'm gonna throw one more in there for Cam. He has the zinger of the season.
I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
Yesterday, for those of you who didn't hear it yesterday, Cam Heyward, while after the game in his post-game press conference, said that he was happy for Pat Freiermuth because he got a win in the state of Ohio, which doesn't happen often. Mm-hmm. Pat Freiermuth, who is a Penn State alum, Cam Heyward, Ohio State alum. They just played this past Saturday. Ohio State won, so that was a pretty good jab. But all right, so here's my argument for TJ, because everything you said about Cam is true.
Mhm.
He's the consummate leader. He is the leader of that defense, in my opinion. But here's the thing. I know that outside linebacker, edge rusher is a sexier position in the NFL right now, and it gets more notoriety than the
defensive lineman.
the interior defensive lineman. But the reason why is because I think that they do have the potential to affect the game more. And when you have a guy, like, everybody wants that edge rusher, right? The Browns have Myles Garrett. The Steelers have TJ Watt. Everybody wants that guy that can get off the edge, beat the tackle, beat the tight end, whatever, beat the chip that's on him, and get after people. But TJ Watt does more than that. Yeah, TJ Watt has 8.5 sacks this year.
Mhm.
But the thing about TJ Watt that people don't realize is he also has 3 deflected passes at the line of scrimmage this year, and he's forced 2 fumbles and recovered 3. Every single way that you could impact a football game, he does it. I'm sorry, 4 forced fumbles and 2 recovered.
I thought that was low. Yeah, I thought that was low.
Yeah. So he had 3 forced and then 2 recovered, 3 pass deflections. And he's done that all in 6 games. And in one of the 6 games that he's played, he wasn't 100%. That Packers game, he was not himself. And he still had 2 sacks in that game. So the thing with TJ Watt is, he plays the sexier position that's going to get more notoriety, but he plays it better than anybody in the NFL. And he does it in a way that impacts the game more than just getting after the quarterback. Look at what he does in the run game. But when he gets a hold of a running back, the running back doesn't go anywhere, man. He makes the tackle. When he gets his hands on you, you go down. And that's so he's more than just the edge rusher. He's more than just the guy that's going to get after the quarterback. And because of that, because he's getting paid to get after the quarterback, but he does so much more. Yeah, he may not be the leader of the team yet because Cam Heyward's the older guy. I say older guy, he's my age, but he's been on, Cam's been around longer. And also I think there's something to be said with Cam, that Cam was participating all offseason while TJ was there, but he wasn't participating because of the contract negotiations. And I think that there's a little bit of that dynamic that, okay, Cam, because you're the older guy, because you were here, we're going to give you defensive captain. But I would not be shocked to see within the next year or two to see that torch get passed to TJ, because I do think TJ is a leader. I just don't think that I don't think that we see everything that he does. You can be much as we see what Cam does.
Be a
from
leader.
A
You can be a leader without being a vocalist. Not all great leaders are these people that make these amazing speeches. I look at a Troy Polamalu. There was games where they said that he wouldn't even say anything. He wouldn't say a word. How do you lead? Well, you lead by example. Sidney Crosby's a guy that leads by example. And TJ Watt has already done that, because the TJ Watt has turned. That's why 2 weeks ago I said TJ Watt reminds me of a guy that could play on the 2008, 2010 Steelers, because those guys were primetime players. And when you needed a big play, who's going to make it? Well, TJ Watt has literally said, I'm that guy now. The only thing I'm saying about Cam, and I would love to hear people's arguments. If you're watching this on YouTube, put it in the comments below, why. I'm saying that this season in particular, I do think Cam has been the more consistent player overall, and factoring in that they're missing Alu and Tuitt, and I don't think people realize how big of a loss Stephon Tuitt has been to this defense. Cam has played even better than he has, and we're talking about a guy that was a pro, all-pro. I think he's playing at an all-pro level again this year, and because he's not going to have the sacks and stuff, he's not going to get the national notoriety.
It's awesome to be able to have this debate.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
And I'll put a bow on this segment here, because here's what if you look at the 2005 Pittsburgh Steelers, okay, 2005, 2006 won the Super Bowl. You got Troy Polamalu at safety. You got Joey Porter at linebacker. You got Casey Hampton at interior line, right? If you look at the 2009 Pittsburgh Steelers, they got Troy Polamalu at safety, they had James Harrison at linebacker, and they had Aaron Smith and an older Casey Hampton, but still, they had some pretty solid defensive linemen on that football team. You look at this Pittsburgh Steelers team. You got Minka Fitzpatrick at safety, who I do think is going to come back to form. Okay, he had a rough couple weeks. He's going to come back to form. I'm very confident of that. He showed some signs yesterday or on Sunday. So you got Minka Fitzpatrick at safety. You've got TJ Watt at edge rusher linebacker, and you've got Cam Heyward at interior defensive line. They have the makeup. This team has the potential. They have all of the pieces that they need. They need to see more from a Minka Fitzpatrick. They need to see more from a Joe Schobert. They need to see more from Devin Bush. There's guys that they need to see more from. Yeah. But this defense has the makeup to, if they put all the pieces together and get clicking, they have the makeup to shut down teams. They shut down Buffalo's passing game. They shut down Cleveland's running game. They've proven that they can do it in big situations. They've proven that they can take over a game when they need to take over a football game. They just need to string it for more than one or two games. They need to, as Najee Harris put it Sunday in the post game, they need to keep stacking bricks.
Yes.
And if they do that, this is going to be a force to be reckoned with, this defense. And all the offense will have to do is just enough, like they did on Sunday versus the Browns. They'll have to just do enough to get by and win, put 20 points on the board, and this defense can very well get you a win.
Absolutely.
So we'll take a break. When we come back with a little bit more Steelers, I think we're going to try to touch on maybe Sid Crosby's comeback because that did happen. It's not been a good week for the Penguins, but we'll maybe touch on them. Yeah, it's early. But this is the Mad Chad and Eddie Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back to the Mad Chad and Eddie Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Eddie Provident. With me is my co-host, Mad Chad Nolan. Chad, we're talking about leaders. We talked about leadership with Cam Heyward and TJ Watt, and we talked about all these guys like Troy Polamalu who have come before all them. The hockey team in Pittsburgh, they know a thing or two about leadership. they know a thing or two about leaders and all-time great players. With Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, Evgeny Malkin, and the guy that came back over the weekend, Sidney Crosby. Now, Penguins struggle. They've been struggling as of the time we're recording this show. They've had 3 losses in a row, but it's early in the season. They started off hotter than we thought they would, so they kind of built themselves a little bit of a cushion. All things considered, if you would have told me they were going to be 3-2 at this juncture, I would have taken it. I would have been all right with that, knowing who they've lost and who they didn't have in the lineup. All this COVID stuff that's been like the COVID run that they've had. If they can get through this at 500, getting some decent points, I'm cool with it. But what do you think? Getting Sidney Crosby back into the lineup, what do you think that does for the guys on the ice?
I mean, okay, I'd be careful how I word this, because the one thing we talked about with Jesse, and my biggest fear was that when Crosby and Malkin come back, all of a sudden here it comes where, well, now if I'm from a third line player or fourth line player, now I don't need to do as much because Sidney Crosby's back. And
I'm going to defer to Sid for everything. I'm going to defer
to Sid. Sid's going to take over. And, for one thing, I was talking to a few people Saturday when I was watching the game, and I was like, I don't know if Sid looks healthy to me, or if his timing was off. It was one of the worst games I've seen him play in quite some time, and I'm sure he would tell you the same thing. But again, it just I don't think they played bad, but I still, my biggest fear is that the way this team is constructed, that especially in a salary cap, that I think there's just too much on the shoulders of Crosby and Malkin, and I don't think at this stage in the game of their careers they're able to carry the burden like they were 4, 5, 6 years ago. And what's really worrying me is Gensel, Zucker, and especially a guy that I've been very hard on is Kasperi Kapanen. like these guys, if they don't start picking up some of the slack that is left behind without Malkin, and if Crosby takes a while to get adjusted back, and again, he's going to regress productivity wise. If the top wingers on his team don't start stepping up and creating offense on their own, then at that point, I'm going to be a little worried as a fan.
How wild is it that right now the Steelers and the Penguins are mirror images of each other?
Mirror images of each other.
Like their big superstars are aging. You know,
although I don't know if the Penguins have an equivalent of TJ Watt for the future.
No, they don't. But you know, they're relying on big time guys to do, you know, to make big time plays.
Yeah.
They're relying on a Jake Gensel and a Kasperi Kapanen to be the big time scorers that they should be. They're relying on a Zucker to be a scorer and that like two-way winger that he used to be when he was with Minnesota. That's what they brought him here for, right? And so, you know, Sid is getting older, Gino is getting older, and you can't rely on them as much. Now, obviously, you know, they're going to have an impact on the defensive side of the ice as well, where, you know, Ben obviously won't impact the defensive side of things, but so you kind of can isolate, as important as quarterback is in football, you can kind of isolate that to just offense, where, you know, Sid's got to worry about playing a two-way game, and Malkin's got to learn how to play a two-way game a little bit more than he maybe used to. But they're just so mirror images of each other right now. It's like the older veteran core with all the young guys around them that, you know, you need them to make these plays. You need big plays and big moments, and right now the Penguins, you know, while the Steelers on this 3-game winning streak are getting those big plays, the Penguins right now are struggling to find that scoring. They're struggling to get the guys that you named. We're struggling to see the team struggling to get them going right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's only a matter of time with the type of talent they have, but it's one of those situations where, okay, you bought yourself a little bit of cushion with the start that you had. But in this division, in the Metro division, with teams, you know, like Washington and Carolina, that are, you know, Philly looks a little better than they have. New York looks better. You don't have the Islanders. You know, you don't have the time to have a 15-game lull where you have to figure things out. You've got to get things moving quick.
No, and it's just funny that, like, and again, you know, I'm someone that. I said this. I tweeted this out on Saturday. I said I criticize a guy, I'm a hater, and I defend a guy, I'm a fanboy. There's no winning. There's no winning in this pundency world. But Kasperi Kapanen, again, like, I'm sorry, they gave up assets to get this guy. Again, after they drafted him as a first-round pick and then traded back for him, he's making over $3 million a year. He's on the second line. And the thing about Kapanen is he's not a good enough two-way player where, like, if he's not scoring, you know, well, he's still a good player because he's really not. Like, he's not a good two-way player. If he's not scoring and he's not producing, he's really not helping you.
He's not offering much.
And he has one, as of this podcast, going back to last year, he has one goal in his last 14 games and 0 goals this season.
And I saw somebody reply to you, boy, he's got 4 assists.
Oh, great. Yeah.
They're not paying this guy for assists.
Jerk off motion for that. And here's where I really get mad at Yinzers and pissed off at Yinzers is like, but like Dom Simone, who doesn't even play every night and makes 1/8 of what Kapanen does, gets just killed on. He doesn't score enough. This is the guy you're paying to score. You're paying him to score goals, and he's not scoring them. And I'm a hater for saying that.
It's frustrating because, you know, you can go down the line and like find guys that, you know, for some reason, like let's take Chris Letang. Chris Letang is. I love the way you put it last season. Mike Matheson is everything that people think Chris Letang is.
Yes,
you know, but Matheson from the general public gets a lot of love because he's flashy, and Chris Letang gets streamed about, and we're constantly talking about trading Letang because, you know, he made a turnover in the neutral zone again in that one game that one time that, you know, led to a goal.
And I'll say this about Jason Zucker. You know, I think Zucker is a decent player, and he should be playing with Crosby. His style of play fits the style of play that Crosby would want out of his winger. If they're not going to do that, then at this point you should just look to move him.
Yeah.
Because he does not have a role in the team.
And he's taken up over $4 million cap.
Five.
So this is a cap strap team.
Gensel, Zucker, and Kapanen are combined for over $15 million from the cap. And Zucker actually has 3 goals. Gensel has 1 and Kapanen has 0. Now, I will say that Jake's not playing as bad. He's just really getting unlucky. To be fair, like he has, if you look at his underlying numbers, he's creating chances and he's just snake bitten. So I'm less worried about Jake than I am Kapanen, because again, when you look at Kapanen, if he's not scoring, he literally is. He's like Phil Kessel. He's not helping you at all.
The thing with Kapanen, Gensel, I think, is one of those players that can create his own offense.
Absolutely.
Kapanen, I've not seen
off the rush. That's it.
I would have to, I'd have to look at the underlying numbers a little more, but I have never seen or have known Kapanen to be the guy that can create and generate his own offense. He has the talent, but he's never been that guy, and he needs to be with somebody like a Malkin, like a Crosby, that can generate the offense for him so that he can get the scoring chances. He's a finisher. He's not a playmaker.
But see, he should be it's his the talent that he, like when you go watch and you've been down, when you go watch him, you see it. And he had Dejan was the one that really turned me on to being a Kapanen believer. I remember I had credentials to go to the development camp the year they drafted him, and I mean, everybody was like, dude, this dude, he looked like a man amongst boys at the development camp when he was first here, and he was just deking through people, and his wrist shot is so powerful. But, and again, it's just like, where does that confidence go? I get it, you're snake bitten, but like Phil Kessel, if Phil Kessel would go like 3 games without a goal, it would be like Kessel needs trade. But people got mad at me this past weekend because I had the nerve, and I didn't even say it. I didn't say they should trade. I said Kapanen hasn't scored X amount of games. Oh, you're a hater. You're blah blah blah. I'm like, F off. You know what? F off, really.
I hope that because he's a likable guy. Like he seems like the kind of guy that
he is. I met him. He's a good guy. Yeah.
He seems like he could be a fan favorite. So hopefully we get.
He's probably going to score 2 goals against Philly, and people will quote retweet me and be like, "Yeah, up your ass, Chad."
Especially since we're recording this before the. So here's my. This is the last thing because I do. Since we're talking hockey, I do want to touch on this and. As much fun as we're having, I hate to get super serious, but we'd be remiss if we're going to talk hockey and not talk about this. The situation in Chicago, I don't even have words. I've been so angry after watching the interview with Kyle Beach. I've been so angry after watching the press release. The 17-minute press conference from the Wirtz family and their the independent investigator that they hired. His last name's Shar. I can't think of his first name right now off the top of my head. But basically, listen, I'm not going to get into all the details because, honestly, I can't. It's too much. I would encourage you to just Google Chicago Blackhawks sexual assault allegations, and you can find everything that you need to know. Basically, Kyle Beach was John Doe number 1, who accused Brad Aldrich, the video coach of the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks team, of sexually assaulting him. He reported it to the team. He reported it to the NHLPA. The team did nothing. And actually, Joel Quenneville, the coach, is accused of saying that this was not the time, paraphrasing, but it was not the time to deal with it because they were going into the Stanley Cup Finals. They were in the third round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and this wasn't the time for the team to deal with something like that because they had a cup to win. The front office did nothing. The front office, as far as we know, didn't even tell the ownership. They kept it a secret from ownership. The independent investigation seems to verify that, corroborate that. And Kyle Beach basically just went unheard and was actually made fun of by his teammates. His teammates used homophobic slurs against him that season in that playoff run after he had, reported it to the team. And he basically just for 10 years went unheard, 11 years went unheard and unnoticed until Katie Strang and Rick Westhead finally started, reporting on this when the John Doe number 2, who was a high school student that was also sexually assaulted by Brad Aldrich, finally, took this to court, and finally, the allegations were actually made public. All I have to say is, man, my heart breaks for Kyle Beach. Everything that dude went through, everything that he had to deal with, the pain that I'm sure he carried with him and still carries with him to this day, man, my heart breaks for that guy. And this is a fun show. Chad and I love to get into debates. We love to get into hockey talk and football talk, the occasional Pirates talk. But when something this serious happens in the sport that you and I are most passionate about, this hockey is our thing, man. We say this every week. If you've listened to our show at all, we're a hockey show at heart. And when the NHL drops the ball this bad, and Gary Bettman gets out on Monday and does such a poor job of dealing with this from an NHL level, even if there's 5 people that are listening to Chad and I, we've got to talk about this. We have to speak out about it, even if it's for the last 5 minutes of a show. It has to get noticed. It has to get dealt with. Hockey culture has got to change. This isn't a political thing. This isn't a social thing. This is a real life thing that hockey culture has to change. It has to be different. We need to do better as hockey fans and making our sport safe for people. And it's not right now. And until it does, we can't shut up about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And as someone that has been accused of things, but also have been on both sides of the coin, I've been abused in my past, both verbal. The one thing that I, up until a few years ago, didn't take seriously enough, and I was talking to a few people, mutual friends on Twitter about this, is language. I never used to like. I know in my past I would have, and I think you're guilty of this as well, is like
100%
saying things, using verbiage that when you look back on it, you go, man, I can't believe I used to call people that. I can't believe I used to say stuff that. And that's the difference, because I know that on like Dejan tweeted something out, and then like right away I was reading his replies, and it was like, oh, this is cancel culture. And I'm like, okay, as someone that literally got in trouble for things that I said legally, I'm telling you, it's not cancel culture. It's called being held accountable. I said something wrong or that I wasn't supposed to. I got in trouble, and I had to learn from that. And that is what's happening. But what's happening here is a thing that is the problem, not just with the hockey culture, which is a problem of that, but it's society. It's our corporate culture, where it's the tribalism, where, again, the story of, okay, this is happening. Obviously, someone along the line should have been like, you know what? The Stanley Cup is a materialistic achievement. It's not as important as bringing someone that's been, victimized of sexual assault to justice. Yeah. But in our world, in our society, where everybody just cares about number one and money and success and moving up, and not shifting the paradigms of where they are, and not ruffling any feathers. Tribalism is probably, to me, the worst thing about society, is that you don't want to upset this person because, well, you might get ostracized. Look at like police unions and stuff like that. That's a big problem as well. You're a rat if you stand up and do something. And I know some of those players probably had the urge to be like, you know what, I'm not cool with this, but if I speak out, then I'm the
guy. Yeah. Well, but here's what it comes down to. I would have been a lot more encouraged about the situation had everybody came out in support of Kyle Beach and really like put this to bed that, yeah, it was a mistake. We were wrong, blah, blah, blah. But, but here's the thing. Jonathan Taves had the opportunity to do that, and he called Stan Bowman and Joe Quenneville good guys.
Yeah.
Okay. And McDonough, he called him a good guy. He didn't. I don't even recall Jonathan Taves like really apologizing for anything that was done. Stan Bowman straight up didn't apologize in his statement to the media, and he put all the blame on the one guy that's not in the NHL anymore. Kevin Cheveldayoff is not seeing any kind of. He was an assistant general manager, and he's not seeing anything any kind of discipline for this. He's not losing his job, anything. All of the guys that did lose their jobs had the opportunity to step down rather than get fired.
Right.
Okay, Joel Quenneville, before he stepped down, coached a game the night that all of this came through.
Yep.
So as much as I want to be encouraged that, okay, it's getting ink and it's getting exposure, at the same time, we're not seeing any, what you said, Chad, we're not seeing any accountability. We're not seeing anyone being held accountable for what happened to this poor guy and what happened, quite honestly, because of their their ineptitude and because their unwillingness to do something. It happened to an intern, a 22-year-old intern, and it happened to a high school kid.
I'd take it a step further. I would say a lot, like especially like Taze and some of those other comments, I found them as straight up cowardly. Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a great word for it. Cowardly.
Like,
that's a great word.
Okay, you couldn't take a stand because 10 years ago you were in the middle of a Stanley Cup run. Okay, I mean, I disagree with that, but at least that does make some kind of sense. You know, like, and
Taves was a young kid.
You can't say the right thing 10 years after when you have nothing to lose at this point.
Exactly.
You know, like, again, it's about accountability. And I speak again as someone that has been held accountable. Accountability is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's the only way that you can learn and progress as a person and a society. And from what I saw all these guys say, it shows me they haven't learned one damn thing.
Not at all, man. And so, you know, there's the serious topic for the Mad Chad and Eddie show for hopefully a while. Like I said, we're a hockey, football, sometimes baseball, sports podcast. We like to have fun. We like to joke around with each other, take jabs at each other, debate the sports topics, have good conversations with good guests. That's what we're about. We're about getting people away from the real life stuff for 45 minutes out of their week. But sometimes the real life stuff bleeds into sports and we have to deal with it. And so because we were talking hockey, I thought it would be disingenuous of us to not talk about this and at least just throw our support out there for Kyle Beach. And not that Kyle Beach will ever hear this, but dude, your courage is incredible. And, you know, we support you obviously. And, you know, hopefully you find the healing and the peace that you need. But that's it for our show today. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when all the new shows are coming out. Every day at 2 p.m., you got a new show coming. 6 p.m., you got Steeler Nation on Fridays that comes out. Make sure you check all the shows out. DK's Daily Shots in the morning. There's a lot of content on the podcast network. There's something for everybody, I promise. If you're a baseball fan, football fan, hockey fan, you know, if you like listening to smart people that are entertaining, there's something for you on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Check out all of our writers on the website too. You know all of them: the Dale Lawleys, Chris Carters, Dave Molinaris of the world, Alex Stumps. Great writers, great people. Tom Reed, another good one. So check everybody out. Check all the podcasts out. We appreciate you always listening to us, and if you made it this far, God bless you. But for Mad Chad Nolan, I'm Eddie Provident. This has been the Mad Chad and Eddie Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. We'll catch you next week.